Kuria, Rukia, Hashish, Dada and her siblings are but a few of the 42 million refugees whose lives changed in the blink of an eye due to war, violence, and fear of their safety in their own countries. According to the UNHCR Global Trend Report, 80% of the world's refugees are in developing countries. In recent years, the African continent has been characterized by a succession of large-scale refugee movements and internal population displacements. Rukia, like many of the urban refugees, has turned to the Refugee Rights Resource Center, founded by Mrs. Veronica Maina, an accomplished lawyer in Kenya. Registered as a trust, the Refugee Rights Resource Center aims to sensitize the public at large on the issues related to the refugees landing in Kenya.
The aim of Refugee Rights Resource Center is to help the refugees within who are landing in Kenya from various countries around our nation, to help them alleviate the sufferings they have been going through, because they have largely remained unheard.
Very little is understood about the refugees and their status in any host country.
First of all, a refugee has to be recognized by the state in order for that term to become applicable to a person. Now, when somebody just crosses in from Somalia today, they have been recognized from a first refugee. But say, for instance, somebody is coming from a place like Congo, they are asylum seekers. When they go through the process of refugee status determination, provided for both under the Convention and under the Refugee Act of 2006, then that's when you say they have been recognized as a refugee. Now, that process does not make anyone a refugee. No. A refugee is made a refugee or is turned into a refugee courtesy of the circumstances which they are fleeing from.
Kenya has and continues to provide asylum to refugees fleeing war-torn neighboring countries, and according to the United Nations, 5,000 refugees enter Kenya every month.
We foresee a situation where the Kenyans themselves have been very xenophobic, I must say that, very xenophobic, because they are viewed as intruders, unwelcome guests, unwelcome visitors who are coming into an area where the resources have actually been strained by the citizens themselves.
According to the Refugees Convention, the host country must protect all refugees, and since Kenya is a signatory, the status and legality of the refugees must be respected.
Now, upon being recognized as refugees, they are entitled to basic things like shelter, in line with the same rights that our nationals would be having, because the minute the state becomes obligated to take or to give protection, to meet the protection needs of the refugee, then they would be entitled to shelter, to food, to health services. They would be entitled to certain other rights.
Moved by the plight of the urban refugees, who are constantly harassed by security forces, Veronica, through the Refugee Rights Resource Center, has focused her attention to defend the rights of the refugees.
The government has allowed the refugees to trade and to do small business enterprises so that they can have sustainable income, which would help them then to ease the burden of the expectation from the state to maintain the refugee within the nation.
The traditional image of life in a tented, exploring camp no longer tells the full story of a refugee. As the world urbanizes, refugees too are increasingly moving to built-up areas. Refugees move to the city in the hope of finding a sense of community, safety and economic independence. However, in reality, what many actually find is harassment, physical assault and poverty.
We are angled towards giving them representation. They have been facing a lot of harassment, let's say, from the security forces, right from the entry points when they are coming to Kenya. At the border points, you find security agents who may not understand why the refugee needs to cross over the border to Kenya.
Unless the government, civil society and public understands the complex issues related to refugees and asylum seekers, these groups of people will continue to live undignified lives.
We are collaborating and networking with other players in the field, particularly the UNHCR, and the Department of Refugee Affairs. We are giving them feedback of what the refugees are saying about the services that are being given to them. You find quite a number have really been crying to be resettled out of the country, out of Kenya, because of the situation they are living in right now. And while as many may not now be facing the threat to physical integrity and physical harm, they are crying out loud for lack of basic needs. So they would either need to be resettled in better destinations where they are able to earn their keep, and then the situation is brought to a rest.
Not many organizations would claim to have competencies to legally represent the refugees, like the Refugees Rights Resource Center.
Due to possessing relevant competencies in international refugee law, we are representing any refugee or any asylum seeker who is arrested on the basis of being in breach of immigration rules or laws, and we represent them in court to enable them be freed from any police incarcerations or freed from any prosecutions which are not due to such category of persons.
The objective of the Refugee Rights Resource Center is to create awareness of the refugee rights among the stakeholders and the community in Kenya, to lobby for legal reform in refugee law in Kenya, to enhance realization of durable solutions for persons recognized as refugees in Kenya, to work to eliminate all forms of gender-based violence in refugee communities, to foster political environment for enabling access to basic rights and services to refugees in urban centers, to support children refugees to access education and health services, to build capacity in legal fraternity, to inform and research on refugee matters, amongst others.
What we need the nation and the people to understand, the host community to understand, is that first of all, it's an obligation. Second, the refugee is a vulnerable person. It's a person who has lost protection from their state. So they are extremely vulnerable. So how we intend to communicate this to the host community is by interacting with them, giving venues and opportunities for the refugee, the host community, and the actors, both from the state, the security agent, and every other service provider who will affect the rights of a refugee, to come round the table, sit together with the refugees, listen to them, hear their voice, and then understand the issues that surround the refugees.
In order to succeed in meeting its objectives, the Refugee Rights Rescue Center will work closely with the refugee communities, the government of Kenya, foreign missions of other countries in Kenya, the United Nations system and other non-governmental agencies, faith-based and community organizations, government agencies that liaise with the Refugee Affairs Department, the judiciary, and the Kenya Police.
I see this program is very good, and it can help those refugees in Kenya, especially in Nairobi, and refugee camps. So I see this program is very perfect. I wish this program can help those people, and even those Kenyans which are Somalis but are Kenyan, which has a problem for the government, for the police.
I have watched the situation of the refugees, listened to the many complaints, and had Kenyans, maybe sometimes out of ignorance and out of lack of understanding, complain about the refugees. And somebody had to come around and either put some sanity into the whole situation and help the country to manage the plight of these refugees. First of all, without hurting the ailing refugee or hurting the one who is really suffering from the persecution. And secondly, to help the host community either take them up or share the burden with the international community. So there is need. There is an urgency in the need that there is right now in managing the refugee situations. Then when you come across girls who have gone through all this, it moves your heart to some form of, even if they are not Kenyans, are they not people?
The road to safety is a long, endless road with lack of basic commodities like food, clothing, and proper shelter.
We are interested in the Refugee Legal Aid Program, where we will represent them in court, and we help them with obtaining identification documents. When they have issues and when their status has been adjudged, for instance, if Nasela Msika feels that they were given the wrong verdict in the refugee determination process, we have aimed and have been assisting in appealing against decisions which are not protecting the rights of the refugee. And then we are also lobbying governments and the departments that be and the actors that be for change of or reform of the policy, the refugee policy and the programs. Yeah, and we also would want what is legislated to be implemented, because one of the greatest challenges right now in terms of the legislative framework is that we have it registered, but it's not yet implemented, so that the refugee is not still enjoying what ought to have been enjoyed from the Refugee Act or from the Convention Act.
In 2000, Moi alitoa amri refugee hao ambaye wanajiweza, ambaye wale ambaye hawako kwa camp wapewe sheria. Na baadaye serikali ya Kibaki ilikuja ikaanza kuimplement. Wakati wameimplement, tumekutana na shida nyingi sana, lakini leo tuna lawyers ambaye tunaweza kupelekea hii mambo iende mbele.
Every month, unaccompanied women and vulnerable children arrive in Kenya seeking protection, freedom and safety from abuse, mistreatment, torture and human trafficking.
We have children who are orphaned. We have unaccompanied women who have journeyed all the way. And the worst thing that can happen to a refugee is to journey all the way and find your reception center at the border point is the bush. Then when you enter further in, you find hostility and lack of acceptance within the host community. Nothing could be as demeaning to the life and the dignity of a person. So what we would want to ask the host community is to appreciate the plight of somebody fleeing for their life and understand the need to accommodate the person.
A lasting solution, the possibility to begin a new life, is the only dignified solution for a refugee in Kenya.